My name is Chris Beer, and this is my history project on the Depression. Speaking with me is my grandfather from Newfoundland, and here he is. Where did you live during the Depression?
Swift Current, Placentia Bay, Newfoundland.
How old were you during the Depression?
26 years of age.
What was your job?
Well, we had a sawmill at that time.
And you worked on it full time?
We cut logs and sawed the cooperage for the merchants that sold the staves to make casks, fish casks. They packed the fish for export. That was the merchants at Spencer's Cove and Harbour Bluff at that time.
What was your first memory of the Depression?
It's very hard to remember. It's quite a while now, but things were very bad at that time. People didn't have very much to eat, and there was not much employment. The fishery was very bad. The price of fish was very low. Most of the people were on relief at that time, on dole. They didn't get very much. They got $1.80 a month. That was around 6 cents a day.
Did people know why the Depression occurred?
Well, I suppose they thought they were owing to world conditions at the time. There was depression in different parts of the world, even in the United States and on the mainland Canada.
How large a family were you living with?
There was 5 of us in family.
How did the Depression affect your family? Like in general, like did each of you have to leave home or leave school in order to support your family?
Oh yes, some of the family went probably in the lumber woods. And we stayed home at logging with a small sawmill at the time.
The sawmill, now what time of the 30s would that be? The early or late part?
Around 1933.
How did people survive with the lack of money?
They just had to get by the best way they could. There wasn't too much to earn, and most everybody had their own vegetables, grew their own vegetables.
They were self-sufficient.
Mostly. They had their own cattle. Some people had cows. More people had sheep and hens. They had hens. And in the winter time, they went in the deer country, and they killed caribou. That was give them some of the fresh meat.
What were the prices of goods like as compared to now?
Oh, very, very cheap. No comparison to what it is today.
How available were items, and was it always available?
There was only a very limited amount of things in the stores, supplies, food, all that. People mostly, what they did, they take out goods in the spring of the year, and then when they sell their fish, they would put that in on their account. They had sort of a barter business, you know.
Was there rationing in Swift Current?
No rationing. The only problem was getting the money to buy food.
In other words, there was food there, but there wasn't enough money to buy. How bad was the unemployment situation in your area?
Oh, it was very bad. There wasn't very much employment. Most everybody was out of work. Perhaps anybody was lucky enough to have a sawmill or something like that. There was fishing in certain parts of the island. That was the mainstay, fishery. But they didn't get any price for the fish. And the markets were very poor at the time.
How did your community adjust to the Depression? Did they get involved helping people in the community if they could not pay what they owed?
There's nobody in a position to help somebody else because everybody seemed to be in the same boat. Most everybody, apart from probably anybody who had probably a sawmill or something like that.
Back in the early 30s, did your family have a radio?
No, not in the early 30s. Later on, in probably 38 or 39, we had the radio.
When you got it, how important was it to the family? Was it the center of attention for a few years, or?
Well, it was very important, and that's the way we got the news, the hospital reports from the earliest news bulletin.
Well, like, were there weather programs then, or did that just come later?
Oh yes, they gave out the weather forecast and the hospital reports, and different things. That's the way we got the news from that station.
How informed were people about happenings elsewhere, like across Canada and outside of Newfoundland?
We knew very little about things happening in other parts of the world. We didn't seem to know too much about it.
Not down around Swift Current there wouldn't be cars, but were there any cars in Newfoundland at all?
Very few, apart from a few in mostly St. John, around Conception Bay and those parts where they had the roads.
Were people aware of what the government was doing to help try to solve the situation?
Well, the government started some land settlements and tried to encourage farming a bit, and they built some roads, and they built some cottage hospitals at the time. That was commission of government. Our own government went broke, and the Great Britain sent over commissioners from England to administer the colony.
Did they have like welfare, like to give the people money when they needed it, in case like they couldn't make enough to support themselves?
They had the dole. That's what they had to live on mostly, and that was 6 cents a day or $1.80 a month.
And did the government just send it to them like in a check now, like a person now would get under a certain age, you get a baby bonus sort of thing? Would that be the same type of check?
No, they just got a note from the welfare officer and it took it to the merchant and they gave him the goods.
Towards the end of towards the beginning of the Depression, when people knew there was a depression coming on, could you remember anybody coming back from, like, say, the States or something like that, and coming back to Swift-Current or Newfoundland in general to wait out the Depression?
No, I don't think there was too many people. Some of the people went to Canada and worked on the farms. Went probably to Nova Scotia and went fishing. But not too many came back until after the Americans started there in Argentia. They had a lease from the British government for an air base at Argentia. And then the Canadians, they were in Gander, Canadian Air Force. Well, then things began to get better after the war started.
With these outsiders that were coming in, they were bringing in money, were they?
Oh yes, we gave employment. There was more money in circulation at that time.
Near the end of the Depression, do you think the people knew that there was a war coming? Do you think they knew there was going to be a war between Germany and all the Allied nations?
I don't know sure what people thought about it, but I guess they knew there was something on the move.
What was your general idea or feeling of the whole Depression in your sense of mind?
Well, it's very bad. People, no doubt, they had to go through a lot. There were a lot of people, no doubt, were hungry at the time because they couldn't get enough to support their families, and they had to live on just to barely exist. And no doubt there was because of some of the diseases. Tuberculosis was very rampant in Newfoundland at the time. A lot of people died with it. And then they had what they call beriberi, because owing to lack of right kind of food.
Malnutrition.
Yeah, malnutrition.
Like, were people affected, like, in other words, for people that were affected then, do they still show signs of, like, they went through depression, like hiding money away or something like that, like some old people do?
I wouldn't know about that. Sure.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your kind cooperation.
It's a pleasure.